Okay, two variable stats, day 2, part 2. So next we want to talk about the coefficient of determination, which is literally that R value we found up here, over and over again, squared, okay? And it helps decide, it gets rid of the direction of association. So there are a couple of rules of thumbs. If you're looking at R, okay, if R is anywhere between, let's say, 8 and 1, you could call it strong or moderate strong. Same thing if it's anywhere between 5 and 8, you could call it moderate. And anything between 0 and 5, you could call weak. Okay? Even better is this is the specific IB rule of thumb. Take the R squared. R squared equals 0, that's no correlation. 0 to 0.25, that's weak, etc. Okay, and again, this is just a general rule of thumb. You may want to just remember it by that it's going up by 0.25. Okay. And we'll practice that in class. More importantly is how do we find these with the calculators, the R and the R squared, and what does the R squared mean? Well, let's do it with this data. So I'm going to go ahead and I've already done stat, edit, and put it in list 1 and list 2. Okay. If you wanted to, you could graph it. You could go second y equals, plot on, hit zoom 9, and there's our data. Okay. I'm going to say, instead, let's just do it by hand quickly. And if you've noticed, I've changed the grid. Okay. So I went ahead and changed the grid because it didn't match our data. For 1, we have a dot at 5. 2, we have a dot at 8. 3, we have a dot at 10. And I wish I was being a little more accurate with these dots because I want to make it very obvious they're not in a perfectly straight line. 2 was at 8. Okay. 3 at 10. 4 is at 13. So 10, 11, 12, 13. 5 was at 16. 6 was at 18. And 7 was at 20. Okay, so they're almost a straight line. You would expect the R to be very, very strong, okay, between 0.9 and 1. And let's find not only the R and the R squared, but everything. Okay, so I've written down the instructions for you again. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again, but this time we need to turn on our diagnostics so that we get the R and the R squared. So we go second, 0, scroll down to the D. It might actually be easier to hit D or E, you'll get closer to it. Either way, you want to find diagnostics on, enter, enter. Now we'll get our R and our R squared that we didn't get before. So back to this, we put our data in list 1 and list 2, stat, calculate, number 4. We've got our X in list 1, our Y in list 2, and this time I'm going to actually store it. Go to vars, yvars, function, y1, and I know you won't remember that, but we'll talk about it later. And what it'll do is it will not only give us our equation, but it'll store it in this y equals so we can see it graph. Okay, so there is our equation, and I'm going to write that down. Okay, I've written it down. I hope you have as well. Before I show you the notes, I wanted to show you how, so we have y equals the slope of 0.254. Make sure you do 3 sig figs. X plus the y-intercepted point of 2.71. We have our R squared and our R. You could write this down, or since we stored it, if you go into y equals, it's put the entire equation with every single decimal in there for you. So if you go back to graph, it's thinking, hold on, there's a lag. It puts it right in there for you, and you can see how well the points fit the line. Okay? But let's just talk about this quickly. So here is our equation. And if we plugged in, we could see that the y-intercept is at 2.71. So right about here. Okay. And if I could plug in, let's go ahead and plug in another point. I'm going to plug in 5. I'm going to see what predicted value is if I plug in 5. So what I did was I could just eyeball a line through here, but I want it to be the exact line. So I said, let's see what this predicted equation, this y hat equation, okay, gives me if I plug in a 5. And so I plugged in a 5 for x, and I got 14. Notice our real value was 16, but our prediction equation was 14. So 5, 14, it's right there. So now when I draw my line, it should look like that. And that is not the best picture, but it is what it is. Okay? I want to talk about the r and the r squared. Notice they're very strong and they were very easy to get. That's all you need for day 2. So we're actually not done. If you notice before, that line was really low and it was bothering me because it should fit through the points. And I realized that I had, when I plugged it in, that I put 0.25 here instead of 0.54. So if you plug it in, it would actually be a predicted value of 15.4, which is much closer to our real value of 16. So I graphed that. So my purple line should look like that, which is much better. Now you're done.